Muti murders in South Africa are based on rituals and customs which are hundreds of years old. But the recent murders represent a perverted form of ruthless profiteering. Where does this belief in the power of human body parts come from? Why has there been an increase in murders in the past 20 years? There are no obvious immediate answers to these questions.
What we have noticed is that it's being reported more readily, particularly in South Africa, since 1995. Our media has been, trying to find reasons for certain things, and the perpetrators have been very slack about it. They've been done these murders not in the rural areas anymore, but in urban areas, and that is linked up to the movement of a lot of migrant labor and rural people coming to the informal settlements in places like Johannesburg, and bringing those traditional beliefs with them. And what the police have suspected is there's a lot of the people that have gone missing in our townships on a weekly basis are being used for Muti murders. And they've done that, they've linked that because they've found more bodies, and they've actually caught more perpetrators in the act of trying to sell body parts to Nyangas. So that is why there's been a noticeable reported increase in Muti murders in the last sort of 10 years.
The corpse of the child found in the Thames undoubtedly comes from Africa. This is confirmed by medical tests. The case has since become a burning issue in the UK. Press, radio, and TV regularly report new findings. In May 2002, Scotland Yard invited representatives of European police authorities to attend a conference on Muti murders in The Hague. They want to be able to react more quickly to these unfamiliar crimes in the future. The investigators try to understand the background to these occult practices, although they themselves are influenced by very different beliefs.
I feel, and Will can answer himself, but I feel as an outsider, but from the understanding, I don't feel an intruder anymore. I think we've got the right because a 5-year-old boy has been murdered in our country, and the community, society, the government, whoever, wants us to investigate this with a true heart that's a search for the truth. That little boy had no say. Who's going to say for him?
And I would suggest that the vast majority of the African communities present in the UK also want that. Which
they're abhorred by it. You said it yourself. The majority are against it. Same here. They don't want to see people killed in this way. They don't want to see people killed. And if we don't take it on, who does?
Does the fight against these crimes mean the suppression of traditional African religion in general?
We can't answer that, can we? Because we can't put ourselves in that position. But I think that's my point I'm trying to say. It's a point for society, government, whatever, to tackle that issue. It's a bigger problem than just Muti or voodoo murders. So we just cannot come to an answer that will satisfy you in what you're looking for. I understand what you're looking for, but we will go back to, okay, we're doing our job and we're trying to do our job in the best way. It will be totally inappropriate to do this and not try and understand why people are committing these murders. And in order to do that, because we have, fortunately, so few in the UK, across Europe, we have to go where they're prominent, and that's in South Africa, Nigeria, and those other countries in Africa.
Labor migration in Africa is one of the main reasons why extreme forms of traditional religion have shifted from rural to urban regions. Under a highway in Johannesburg, between 60 and 200 people, depending on season, help produce and sell occult remedies made from animal and plant parts. Many of them come from rural regions in the north, from neighboring Zimbabwe and Botswana, or the Kruger National Park. Once or twice a year, dealers come here to sell animals and plants from more distant regions. Parts of a baboon fetch up to $5 US, lion fat $30. The price depends on the strength of the respective muti. But there are increasingly frequent rumors that the most potent forms of muti are also available here. Human body parts. Undercover police investigators arrested a man who tried to sell them a human head for $1,000 US. The occult belief in the curative effect of human body parts and the enormous sums offered and paid for them are simply too attractive for some. The vast majority of traditional healers disassociate themselves from this kind of trade. But in the anonymity of the city, charlatans sell such goods out of greed and thereby damage the reputation of the Sangomas.
No, they don't work together with the police at all. But if we have got a complaint from somebody that through using Muti, or maybe if there are some suspicions that some human parts are here being sold at a certain place, we act immediately to arrest those people and to do more investigation. Where does those parts come from and all those things.
Johannesburg, a city where tradition clashes with modernism. Between 1 and 2 million illegal immigrants from Zimbabwe alone are believed to live in South Africa. Many are driven by sheer desperation to the cities of Johannesburg and Soweto. Prospects of finding a job in the cheap labor sector attract many to distant places. A man who finds a job here can feed up to 60 people in his hometown. Some get rich and move to the wealthy white suburbs, but the majority don't make it. To come to terms with the strange and threatening environment, many turn to occult religions. They desperately rebel against their distress and misfortune and try to achieve wealth and success, social mobility, by resorting to extreme methods.
What is important for me to understand is that this is an African way of understanding that if the harmony of the whole is disturbed, it causes a problem. And if one person progresses more than others, it means others are deprived. And that may be one of the reasons why there's a belief that there's power in bodily parts, because you are taking of what belongs to someone else and make it yours. And the circumstances under which you do it could increase or enhance that power that becomes yours. So to me, it is part and parcel of a worldview of African people.
With the arrival of the Europeans in southern Africa, Not only forms of settlement change, but also family structures, the legal system, and traditional forms of farming. But in times of crisis in particular, traditional beliefs permeate the beliefs brought into the country by European and Arab colonizers. Strict religious customs, originally introduced into the country by Christians, are often adapted today to the spiritual ideas of Africa. ZCC, Zion's Christian Church, is one of almost 2,000 different churches. It is widespread in southern Africa. Worshippers sing and dance and share water and milk before the church service. And they are filled with the Holy Ghost and begin speaking with other tongues. Speaking in tongues, the moment when the Holy Ghost enters worshippers. They speak freely and without constraint. Their tongues are loosened. Worshippers fall into a state of ecstasy. The Holy Ghost is speaking through them. To distinguish themselves optically from other religious communities, the members wear uniforms on Sundays. On weekdays, a star on their chest indicates their membership of the church. Members of the ZCC are given practical guidance during services. They are warned of the dangers of tobacco and alcohol and told that firearms are not a suitable way of solving a conflict.
If I find a lot of problem while I'm praying, I have to go forward so that God will...
Wearing the star is believed to improve chances of finding a job. This is one of the reasons for the religious community's success.
We know as well that from not just from that conference, from our cultural advisors, etc., but we know as well that many of these countries, they have their new faith, Christianity, Islam, whatever, but they've also got that traditional belief below.
Yes,
so whilst on the face of it they may well follow Christianity, they will fall back on their traditional belief, ancestral, and things that have come up through generations and passed on from mouth to ear, and maybe with slight changes. And then we saw ourselves, where you've got Muti in South Africa, because of that word, that Zulu word of medicine. And when you've got voodoo or juju in Nigeria and around West Africa, there's been a kind of melding, a merging of the two beliefs, hasn't there?
Professor Peter Skira is one of the most renowned anthropologists who specializes in witchcraft in Africa. For over 20 years, he has studied the different forms and effects of occult aggression in this region.
Well, what's going on in any case, Muti is it's a South African term, which has an enormous range of meanings in South Africa. Muti is certainly not only the killing of children and using them. So what's going on is that the term Muti is kind of gradually taking on a special meaning in the sense of what you are describing, also these horrible details of people having to cry out when they're being killed. And now we see it suddenly turn up in Nigeria also, for instance, which is very confusing to say the least. So it is it's quite clear that people in Nigeria know about these practices and kind of think, in general, maybe that's a good point to emphasize, this whole world of occult aggression, of witchcraft, if you want to call it like that. For me, what was very striking was how much it is about fashion, about constantly new fashions. And in a way, that's quite logical, because it's a world in which you want to kind of surprise your adversary, in which you want to come up with new things in order to escape older forms of mechanisms of defense. So anything that's new is very tempting because it promises success, because people are not, you can take people off guard or you can surprise people. There are no sanctions yet against that, etc. So it's a world in which people are constantly running after fashion.
Many areas south of the Sahara have no manufacturing industries. To make a living and feed a large family, most people have to set up their own business as street vendors, taxi drivers, or small traders. If their business fails, many turn to a traditional healer for advice. Why isn't my business as successful as my neighbor's? What is the reason for an illness or the sudden loss of a relation? Questions that are frequently asked, but rarely answered. Occult belief and black magic help people understand their own fate. They believe economic success does not depend on personal virtues such as diligence or technical skills. Ancestors and other spiritual creatures influence their fate. If these spirits are neglected, or if they are not honored or offered sacrifices, the social order is disturbed. Illness, dispute, or poverty are the consequences. Can Europeans understand the underlying principles of this culture without dismissing it as backward?
And we've always said that we're not judging this culture.
That's right.
Because, and I carefully said that, you know, cultures bring good and bad. And traditional beliefs have got good in them. However, the only bit that we're saying is we're dealing with the murder side of it. The fact that someone may have a belief where they go through rituals where no one's harmed,
absolutely right.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all. This is almost a deviancy away from the normal traditionally held beliefs.
Yeah. So again, if you take that funding, there's lots of people that have belief,
Yeah.
and then they have certain beliefs, and then right down you have a small number
Yes.
that will go to the extreme,
Absolutely.
and they are the criminals, but all the others aren't.
In July 2003, 21 Africans were arrested in London in connection with the murder. After over 2 years of extensive research, Scotland Yard appears to be on the verge of finally cracking this mysterious case. But the background to the phenomenon of Muti murders and occult violence in Africa is highly complex and is by no means resolved with clarification of the case in London. In occult religions, many different gods are worshipped simultaneously. They compete amongst each other for human adoration. The spirits in these polytheistic systems are capricious. They become enraged when sacrifices are not made in their honor. They threaten illness, poverty, or death, or so it is believed. From today's perspective, Muti murders seem particularly gruesome, but they are neither ordinary crimes, nor are they crimes committed by madmen. The most extreme form of occult violence is a radical expression of the conflict between the economy and the modern and traditional societies in Southern Africa.